Hey everybody, I am Greg Sowell, and this is Why Am I, a podcast where I talk to interesting people to try and trace a path to where they find themselves today. My guest this go around is Taylor Bikowski. They are, and I quote, a celestial star child, learning from past lives and changing the world with love and light. What I really see when I look at Taylor is pure energy in human form. So over the top, I love it. They are a self-described neurodivergent who is putting in all of the work, for sure, all of the work, and experimenting with some really interesting therapies, a lot that I had never heard of before. I think the line that is going to stick with me was, "My trauma was your Tuesday." Oof, just kind of let that hang there for a second. At any rate, I hope you enjoyed this enlightening conversation with Taylor. Taylor Bikowski, thank you for joining me on the Why Am I podcast.
What's up, my dude? Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, you are almost too much, but just right up to the line, which I absolutely adore.
Greg, if I'm too much, go find less.
Damn, just turning it right back around on me. All right, I see how we do. All right, so there's always a scenario. You and I are standing in line. We heard that there's this vegan restaurant that is making these amazing, I'm thinking like I don't know, man, vegan scones with like some fresh berries and stuff in there. Like I haven't had anything like that in a long time. And I'm thinking you and I, we're waiting in line. It's around the block. So we're striping up a conversation. And we talk about me. I am really boring. We get through that super quick. It gets way too grandma-centric and uncomfortable very fast. We move on, and it's your turn to reciprocate. So, Taylor, who are you?
Ooh, what an amazing question. And I've been thinking about this a good amount for like the last month. But I'm going to start off with, I'm Taylor motherfucking Bikowski, my dude. That is who I am. But in bigger terms, I would say I'm a celestial star child, experiencing this series, learning all of the lessons from past lives, forgiving and healing all of the low frequency karmas that we potentially brought into this universe. And overall, I'm here to change the world with love and light and the World Coalition.
Change the world with love and light.
Absolutely.
So what is a celestial star child? What does that mean? That's new to me.
Oh, that's always good. So do you know Orion's belt?
Keeps Orion's pants up? Oh, there you are.
So good. God, I love me a dad joke. So on the left shoulder of Orion's, there's this red star. It's like the 10th brightest star in the galaxy. And it's called Betelgeuse. And that's where your beloved is down from. I got spirit energy coming down from that star, and I am here to kick some ass and take some names.
Really? So you're just mainlining that energy. That's why you're so peppy?
Absolutely. And the cinnamon tea that we got from that vegan shop. It's really buzzed me.
Gotcha. So did you buy it from the shop or the alley behind the shop? Because
obviously
I might need some
the
of that
alley.
Yeah.
Obviously, where the witch like came out and was just like, "You want some tea?" And you're like, "Absolutely, always." And then it takes you places.
Well, you say you're also like learning lessons from past lives. What does that? I mean, what does that mean to you? Like that's an interesting concept.
Absolutely. So I have been the last 2 years, I have been fully focusing on myself and my healing and putting myself first after trauma after trauma. And I eventually started finding some different therapies. I am a huge therapy advocate. And one of the really dope experiences is going to a hypnotherapy. That's been a game changer. It's literally teaching me how to talk to my childhood selves, do that shadow work, reparent yourself, really give you the love and compassion that you need, that, we just didn't necessarily get growing up. And that in combination with my different talk therapies, I go see an acupuncturist, body massage, esthetician, facials. I'm incredibly grateful that I do work for a corporation, but it has incredible insurance. and I have the means to be able to go do these other things. But the biggest thing realizing is, I don't know if you've heard like old souls.
Yeah.
You're definitely like you, my dude, like you are an old soul. And what that means is this is not your first experience. This is not your first human experience. So you've had other human experiences throughout whenever life has dawned of time. And when you end that, your soul, goes back to wherever you're going, and karma adds up throughout these lifetimes and the decisions you make. I mean, you've heard about karma, and it doesn't necessarily affect, you in this specific experience. So, could definitely come back. And with these experiences, doing some past life regression, doing a lot of Reiki, and checking and understanding with my ancestors that I have had many previous lives, and I am learning that it didn't necessarily, I wasn't always the stand-up being you are talking to today. And this is the life experience where we're learning the lessons from all those things. We're forgiving those past selves, and we're trucking along.
Is Reiki like the practice where people like kind of meditate over you and they kind of hover their hands over you and stuff?
There's two different, there's an contact Reiki, and then there's contactless Reiki. So both are great. They both are just, everything is energy, right? Like everything emits a frequency, whether it's a plant or your computer, right? Like everything is energy out. So a very great Reiki healer, they're just really in tune with the energy in the atmosphere and are able to, humans emit that frequency as well. Last night, it was a pre-birthday massage, and it had a lot of Reiki in it. There was some things that came out. There was definitely like a resurrection. There's some gremlins and whatnot. We healed some. I have perished in a few traumatic ways, to say the least. But this was hands-on, and it was something I've never experienced before. It was bananas.
That's interesting. Perished in a few interesting ways.
It did. I've drowned at least twice. I've been on fire. What else was there? There was some other. There's been like it gets dark. There's definitely been some darkness in the past experiences, and that's why we have to bring so much light.
That's interesting. I've never, obviously, like, I understand that, the concept of past lives, and we are, I don't know, just reborn, and sort of that same spirit or soul, inhabits a new form or whatever it happens to be. But I never really, so I'm putting like it into different contexts that I'd never thought of. So you've thought about therapy a lot, and how looking at these past lives help you a lot. And I was just thinking about, like, if you could see yourself in a past life and see some kind of trauma or some kind of experience, does that help you sort of, I don't know, sort of like figure out some, or work out some current trauma you have now, just like examining that sort of from the past, or putting yourself in that, I don't know, just like taking yourself out of your current body and putting it into a previous one, like going through that experience, does that help you sort of like deal with traumas today?
Oh, this one, that's a solid question. And I'm very new. I'm new into this journey of it. There was a lot of work that went into it. For example, if somebody were to just go get Reiki, and they were like, this isn't real, or like, this isn't going to work or whatnot, right? It's not going to work. It's not going to, it's most likely not. It's going to help. But like I really had to get into that mindset. So like, I'd say I'd answer that question. It's two different ways. Yes, towards, because if you can learn and truly feel compassion towards another being, if you will, yourself in a different time, and also come to realize that past experience, let's say this is not discovered yet, but let's say I robbed banks. I was fucking Bonnie and Clyde in this bitch.
I can see it.
Just like absolutely. And but like what that, and maybe I hit somebody's grandma on the way out, just with my car, and learning to be able to go and recognize that and see that, and not having judgment, not having shame or guilt putting on that, and coming at that experience with compassion and love. It truly has helped me look at this human experiences in that light as well. So still really new with that one. And I'd say in a different way, it's so like, right, your body, I don't know if you've like read Body Keeps a Score or heard about it. So like your bodies, bodies are incredible, but they hold memories, they hold feelings, they hold all of these things that you don't necessarily get out. And I am very sensory sensitive. So I'm an HSP, highly sensitive person. And but what that means is like I can feel a lot of pain. And in this lifetime, it's called somatic symptom disorder. It used to be called hypochondriac, but this is actually feeling pain. And so, for example, in last night's session, when I was just fully in it, I could feel energy moving into my arm, and I said it's on fire, and literally having to get that off. And so like I could feel that pain from what I would think would be, or know is to be a different life. So it's just recognizing it and trying to separate myself from it, and then also using it to have that compassion towards myself.
That's interesting. Well, first I'm going to say grandmas have really been taking a beating in the course of our conversation. So we've really got to give them a break.
We do. Love you, grandmas.
Beyond uncomfortable. No, no, but that's interesting. Yeah. And I'm sorry. Like I ask about it just because I'm trying to like see how it could like benefit you to explore past lives. Like, whether you fully subscribe to it or not, like it doesn't matter. Like even if it's just an exercise where you put yourself in those positions, I could really see the value of that. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Like, I love that look at it. Like at the end of the day, it's like crystals. It's like how I think about crystals. Again, they emit a frequency. They actually do a thing. But if you don't fully align with that, at the end of the day, they're just dope ass rocks. Like they're still dope ass rocks, and they still make an aesthetic. So they're still useful in some way. Yeah. So like you said, I like that you used exercise. First you really have to do your own. Like you have to, before you even that's why I'm still new and I'm still having to ground myself and learn about my own traumas and healing those before you even leave your body to go somewhere else. So if anything, it's motivation. Because I want to explore. I want to explore these incredible things. But in order to do that, I have to be able to give myself and all the choices and decisions that I have made throughout this life, and what have other people dawned on trauma onto me, being able to take a step back and look at it and go, all right, at the end of the day, everything had to happen in order for me to be exactly who I am today. It doesn't necessarily make it okay. Certainly doesn't make certain actions okay. But to be able, like, forgiveness is what I'm learning. It's not forgiving necessarily that person or what, it's releasing the hold. And I'm very much, I hold on to everything. It's very sticky. This density, it's very, very sticky. But yeah, I think it's a super, super good exercise.
When you say you hold on to everything, do you feel like you hold on to good as well as bad?
Yes, but definitely bad is, well, and I don't use good and bad terminology, but so those, I'll say, like lower frequency, like the memories, the feelings. The biggest thing about it is survival mode. So our whole memory, our whole construction is that fight or flight, on, freeze type of deal, right? We'll use the tribe example. The gatherers went out, got some berries from a bush. Somebody tried that, got sick, maybe even died. They're out foraging again. They see a bush with leaves that look similar to this berry bush that caused somebody to get sick or died, they're going to remember and not have any of those berries from that other bush. So we are programmed to remember the bad, the low frequency, the negative experiences more for our safety. Mm-hmm. So it's very difficult because those run on a fucking loop for me. It's that negative thought spiral that comes from childhood trauma and above. So I am diagnosed, I experienced borderline personality disorder. And so that's a personality disorder where it's truly trauma-based. And what I have learned was some personality traits weren't actually personality traits. They were trauma traits, is what I call them. And what that means is there's parts, like we have very many parts in us. We have qualities and parts. And the parts at some point took on the burden of that trauma, whether it be somebody, being bullied, getting made fun of, parents not giving the emotional attention that's needed, domestic violence experience. We're going through women's rights and human rights are being taken away. We're living through a pandemic, we're living through a war. All of these things are traumatic and those are sticking in us. And you have to be able to figure out how to get them out of your body and out of your head.
Trauma traits. That's an interesting one.
Trauma traits.
Something I've noticed is, I remember I was leaving a job one time and I was talking to this guy, Jacob, sweetest guy probably in the entire world. He's such a kind soul. And he was telling me all these things he admired about me. And each one of them I could kind of tick off as direct correlations from trauma in my past.
Interesting.
It was just like all these things that he liked about me. I was like, well, I know why I have that. I know why I do that. I know I do that. And I was just thinking, do you have any trauma traits you think that you sort of turned into strengths? I mean, to some extent, I guess those were like coping mechanisms, right? That I just adopted.
Perfect way to say it. I'm very curious on like what he was listing off for you. If you remember, I'm like, what are your trauma traits?
This isn't about me. This isn't about no. It's give and take. It's give and take. So like, I learned that if I showed outward emotion, I would get attacked. And so it was dangerous to have feelings. It was dangerous to show anything. So I learned to suppress and I just didn't feel. And I learned to, even in crazy situations, like I would just lock it down. And so like I maintained calm all the time. And we were in very high stress situations, a high stress job, but you would never see me sweat because that was just like, I had to always be in control. Right. And it's like it was like as a child, like turning everything off and never turning it back on. And so it's like people admire that in you and it's like, wow, that was hard earned, and so I'm always curious to see other people, like, do you have any traits that were, trauma traits, hard earned? Like I'd never had a word for it, but trauma trait, I like that a lot. That other people seem to like, or because I've seen siblings of abusive families and one becomes a drug addict and one becomes a CEO. You know what I mean? So you can cope in very seemingly healthy ways or unhealthy. And so I'm just curious, like, do you have any that you feel like have helped you?
Very many. Absolutely. Actually, that's so funny that you asked that. I was literally thinking about this yesterday and talking through them. So one of the conversations that I had actually with my acupuncture, I was like, where's the line of manipulation so this ties into this trauma trait. So very much, it was a household, it was a lot of yelling, a lot of loud noises. We also didn't know that I was an HSP, that I'm on the autism spectrum, ADHD, like none of these things were known. And so all of those have in common. So everyone experiences, the senses, the intensity of the scale for me is just bigger. So constantly, I mean, the very common, that kind of household, you really have to go, when you go into a room, you gauge the emotions, you gauge the feelings, you understand for survival mode. That's your coping mechanism. And I also, a lot that came from that was people pleasing, and it was making other people's, happy, because when you experience a lot of sadness and anger, I flipped into this role of wanting to put a smile on somebody's face or make someone happy, because, I needed to, I wanted to.
Did you kind of become the peacemaker?
Oh my God. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's where it's so funny. It's like, that's the perfect, it's like the diplomat, the peacemaker has actually followed me, and it's a big reason as to why I'm so successful today, and why I can do what I'm doing. But the occurrences that happened that brought up, is it manipulation, is, so I also I studied people. I literally went to college and studied communication and people, because it was just, I didn't know that was something that I just was fascinated by, and trying to get to know people more, and like the psychology of it. And so I know that I can go up to anyone and I can say something to elicit a certain response. That is how cultivated that skill has become, from that people pleasing. And so when I realized that was a trauma trait, to your point, being able to take these things that are with us, and it's never going to, the past won't change, past doesn't go away, but to be able to take that and go, all right, well, I know that I can go into a meeting when it's a very intense conversation. I'm in the DEI field, and I can gauge how people are feeling, even through virtually. I have a good idea of what I can say, what I could stay around, and navigate a conversation to where it is keeping the peace, but it's also productive. It's being able to ask and be in that uncomfort level. It's being comfortable with uncomfort. And that's just very, very similar. And then one other just popped in, the perfectionist. The perfectionism, very much like an OCD mother. And I mean, this is the mom that I literally couldn't do a school project without using the paper cutter type of deal. Like that shit was pristine, and it was a lot. And that I deal with a lot from that. However, what I realized is, what I was able to take from that is I produce very high quality work. It takes a lot on my mental health, but I do produce this, and it's something that the things that I'm very proud of. You got fear of failure and fear of success in there. Brains are super fun, but those are things that I've now able to take and go, all right, I am in control of these things now. They're not trauma traits. I've learned my lesson from them, and now I'm using it to help me in life. That's a good question.
So something you touched on there, which I think is a trait we probably share, I think you're probably hyper empathetic. Is that how you would describe it?
Yeah, super.
Yeah. So you could I'm not necessarily hyper empathetic, but the idea that you can, and I know you use the word that I used to hate, manipulate. You can manipulate people. And I did like a disc profile, like DISC. I don't know if you've ever done one of those, but you answer a whole bunch of questions and it gives you kind of this personality profile of yours. Mine was interesting because like there's like this chart, right? It's like, kind of imagine like a dartboard, and in the different quadrants, it has different personality types, and it shows you kind of where your traits are. Well, I was like right in the middle. So it basically said that I'm a chameleon and I can kind of fit in any situation. And what it said is that I will manipulate people to meet my end goals. And I was like, I railed against that. I was like, and I've had conversations with other people, like how much I hated it saying that I would manipulate people, because to me, it's got such a bad connotation. Like, who wants to be manipulated, right? Nobody wants to be manipulated. Nobody wants that. But what I learned was I can help people accomplish my goals while also accomplishing theirs at the same time, right? And to me, that's a win-win. Am I manipulating them? I'm helping them to make a decision, or I'm swaying them one way or the other. So I guess that could be, but right, it's like you could use your gifts for good or evil, and I usually use it to build people or help steer them in the right direction. Or especially like when
That's
you
really,
find yourself in a management role, right? It's like, do you want to lead by force, or do you want to be in there with them and, leading from the front of the pack? And so it's just,
helping them grow.
to
Yeah,
me, it's not really it's a good, like, it's an amazing superpower to have. Especially when you use it in the right ways, I think. So I think that's really cool that you have that. And it's funny, like, my partner, I will like talk to her about stuff and she will like rail and go the opposite direction. And then a couple of days later, somebody else will say the same thing. And she'll be like, oh, okay. And I'm like, well, what's going on there? And she'll be like, well, I just don't want you to manipulate me into whatever. So it's like, she's like so hypersensitive of me trying to like, and it's like, I guess like it's unconscious for me. Like I don't even try and do it. I just have conversations with people and like, like I want to know why you want to do this thing. And this is why I think this thing. And, so it's like,
it's like you have a podcast for wanting to understand and know people.
I know, it's so funny. But no, it's just, it's
that's super interesting.
It's funny how those things can positively impact one part of your life, and the other part it's like, oh well, let me be extra careful over here because it's
Absolutely.
like I never want to unduly manipulate somebody. But also, you mentioned perfectionism, and I feel so sorry for you guys. I used to be a lot more of a perfectionist, and then I ended up in an environment where we had insane deadlines, so perfection wasn't an option. And it became all about triage. It's like, I gotta duct tape this thing together as quick as possible so I can move on to the next. And so I know the environment we're in can sometimes be pretty fast paced. And I'm curious how your perfectionism deals with that. Do you just eventually abandon everything? It's like, I just have to stop. I have to leave it. Or do you actually feel like
that's paralysis? That's decision paralysis is actually, yes. The overwhelm comes very frequently for me.
How do you deal with that, like in kind of your professional life, the perfectionism?
So I like to say I'm a recovering people pleaser and perfectionist because we are moving past these trauma traits. We're definitely not letting it control us. We're trying to find that balance. But actually, like in that same light, it's incredibly challenging. I had on Friday, I made this, I've been trying to show, make more content to really show the real, what is BPD rage attack look like? What is the overwhelm paralysis? It's the task initiation for me. And so it really is a battle a lot of times with this perfectionism is I could look at my just growing list of things to do. And when there's just so many, I get into this state of just, I'm trying to find another word for overwhelm. It kind of is just like, I don't even know what to do. And then not doing anything elicits more anxiety and overwhelm. And so it's just this vicious cycle. And so I've been using the phrase, done is better than perfect. And practice makes progress, because I'm having to really, and that's the issue, because I know I can create high quality work. I also run into the issue where just people are not good at their job. And I really do say, like, if I can do someone's job better to them and it's not my job, like that's a problem. That's an issue. And so it's very challenging that I'm like, could be working on a project, if it's with somebody or a conversation, I'm like, like it's right. You have to delegate. You have to be okay with someone else's quality of work or timing. It is, it's quite difficult, but. Yeah.
What part of that affects you the most? Is it like that the work is representative of you, and if they don't do a good job, then it's like it's a direct reflection of like I did a bad job? Or is it, I mean, what about it, like the delegating piece and somebody else doesn't do quite as good, that kind of gets you?
Because I know what it could be. And so when it is not that, I mean, it's a vicious cycle of setting expectations. As soon as you set an expectation on yourself or someone, you're just dooming that, both of you, to fail. But because so I can see the end goal. As soon as I can see what something is supposed to be, then I can figure out how to get there. And I can generally figure out most things that way. But the issue with, or again, challenges that we run into is because then I've seen what that could be. It's becomes too many steps, and then it doesn't even get done all the way. And then it's the negative spiral of, I needed to do this, or I could have done this differently, or why didn't I say this? Why didn't I do this? So it's not necessarily like because my name's on it. Like no matter what, I do have to remind myself, even my average work, my like baseline is usually better than other people's trying hard, because that's just my mentality is just like, I am go, 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 that chameleon working nonstop.
Well, from say, if this is the average point and this is absolute perfection, is there really that much difference in between your work? Like, are we talking like a 2 to 5% difference? Like, how much more polished do you really think it is? You know what I mean? It's like, because it's so funny, like from start to median, sometimes that'll take a little while, but from median to perfection, it's usually like the difference is so marginal. Sometimes you can't even really tell, you know? It's
usually you are like, yeah, all right. So like I've done event management in all different kinds of fields. Like I've done everything from weddings to like Heidi Klum's New York week, fashion week. So it's been a ride. But one of the biggest things with event planning, event management, is moving past all right, well, nobody here knows that this thing didn't happen, or that this wasn't supposed to look like this.
Right.
But it's really hard as my brain, like I said, it gets really stuck, gets really sticky. And that usually like change was always so difficult for me. And then not being able to do the thing, not be able to complete it fully. And it truly changed my experience. And I got lost into that. So with this recovering and healing, it is recognizing that if I'm, to your point, trying to polish off a dope ass presentation deck, I know what's it could be and what it needs to look like. But I have to remind myself, and thankfully I have a wonderful manager right now that's like, don't get lost. Don't get lost in the weeds. Done is better than perfect. You like get that on, just get it on it. You brain dump it and then organize. But I think through, well, this is how it needs to be organized. And this, like, I feel like I need to know what it's going to look like before I even get the content in it. And it's rough, very rough.
So it sounds like this is entirely inside your head. It's not predicated on what my boss is going to say to me, or what somebody else is going to say, or what somebody else will think. It's like everything is just inside of your head, and you know what perfection could be, and anything less than that drives you crazy. Is that?
It's very accurate. Yeah,
holy
it's all
shit.
All in this beautiful, beautiful big brain of mine. Yeah.
That is a scary place to be.
It's self-torture.
I could see how you end up just going in circles and circles and circles, and
yeah.
Wow.
I idle. I'm the spinning wheel of death. That is my brain a lot of times.
Oh my gosh. Done is better than perfect. I love that. And for us, well, in most of my career, it was working is better than, completely on fire. Because that's oftentimes what we were shooting for. It's like,
fair.
Again, triage. Like, you've got 10 things coming at you. I just need to put a tourniquet on this guy. I need to, stop the bleeding on that wound. It's just, and then, man, it was just, it definitely, it beat it out of me. Like the idea of having anything perfect. And I'm at this place now where I can usually just not care, but it's funny because it's not the voice inside my head that bothers me now. It's like, if I don't like kill it and somebody else, I can tell that like, somebody else didn't think that I just killed this thing, like that I just did this, because it's like so much of what I do now, it's like, it's all like this, it's all this work that comes to this pinnacle of where you have to like perform in front of a customer, or you have to go and do this thing and you get one shot and it's pass fail. You know what I mean? Like every time. Yeah. And so you just,
and for you to be able to read that, like the person's energy, as well as if you did a good job or not. I mean, that's good though, that doesn't then get stuck in your head. That is a challenge for sure.
Yeah. So you earlier, and I'm going to go back in time here. You talked about Reparenting? Is that what you
Yes.
said?
Oh yeah.
I've never heard of that concept. That's
Oh my
very
gosh, I would
curious to me.
love to talk about this. This is huge. I'm a trauma fighter. I truly do believe that if we can heal, if everybody could heal their own shit, the world would be a much different place. So reparenting is what that looks like. And I also like throw the word shadow work, and I can explain what that is too. But reparenting is pretty much, it's you going back to a memory, checking in with yourself, going back to a memory, um, and being the parent, saying and doing the things that you needed that you didn't get
Whoa.
back then. So I have an example of that. So, and I preface this by saying I'm in a good place presently with one parent, and again, I truly do believe things had to happen in certain ways for me to be here, but it doesn't necessarily change some of the chaos that happened. And one of the biggest things was, so I used to very much still have very big feelings, right? Like I think you're getting in that sense. Everything is just more intense. And so when I got upset, and had like crying fits, I wasn't able to necessarily like just stop. And my parents, they, right, because like we've gone in the wave of like what parenting needed to be like, crib style. Do they sleep on their face, the back? That's changed like 100 times. So like, parenting is only as good as what society is educating on. But they actually put me in my room, and they had changed the lock from the inside and put it on the outside. They actually locked me in my room, and that was learning how to self-soothe. And all that really, like what I've come to know is all that did for me was realize that my big emotions are not okay. And I'm the only one, or I need to heal and fix and solve that problem by myself. Or if I did something wrong, which like I was a good kid, like whatever I did that was wrong, it just extended it, increased that, and made me feel like those feelings were not okay. So in some reparenting, and I visit this past me a good amount, and it's building that trust. So if anything, no matter what, it's all about trust. Just because it was you doesn't mean that past you is going to completely, you can't just come in and scoop up them in your arms, right? Like It's all consent based as well. And so that was something I worked with a lot of the therapies, and then on OWN was I was able to start sitting outside the room. I was then able to come and sit inside the room. And then it was a beautiful moment where past Taylor like crawled into my lap, and then I was able to hold and just hold and say the things that like I needed to have heard back then. And then you always finish it with like, do you want to get out of here? And it's usually like, fuck yeah, get me the hell out of here. And I come up with different ways to get past Taylor out. We've jumped on a unicorn's back and flowed through space. We've gone on roller coasters, and you create a healthy, beautiful landscape inside your head where those past selves can go. You can check in.
That's interesting. Do you feel lasting differences after doing that kind of thing?
It's really unbelievable how healing it truly is. I'd say they definitely add up. Like, it's not like you can, I wouldn't say if somebody's new into it and then just like picks a memory and does it and is like, oh my God, I'm healed. Right? Like there's a lot more fucking memories that you would need to go to. And it's maintenance, like everything like you've seen under bathroom drawers and whatnot. At some point you have to reorganize and clean it and maintenance it. But by doing this consistently, and that's the word that I use most often, is it's consistency and trust. Those are the pinnacles and pillars for me. But the more you do that, the more your past self is now trusting that your current self, you say, I'm an adult now. I will never let somebody say or do the things to hurt you in this way ever again. I protect you. I'm here for you. And what that does is it flips from a trauma trait, it flips from this survival mode into more of the driver's seat. And I used to say this, I used to say, it did feel like I was in the driver's seat, but like in a self-driving car, not like a Tesla or anything, like just what Tesla, like the first edition will be in like 100 years and people are gonna be like, oh, that garbage can. So like that, so like I was in the driver's seat, I wasn't in control, and there was a fog over the windshield. That's how I feel like I was experiencing life up until about a year or so ago, where I truly fell in love with myself for the first time and found self-worth, respect, and trust. And it's by doing all of these things.
Do you feel like whenever you go back to that space, is it easy to find the words to say to your younger self?
So challenging. It's really hard because it's not like you've heard them before. So I lean on, thankfully this was really helpful with like the hypnotherapy is guiding. My therapist guided me into like, what would you like to say, or what does your past self need to hear? And so I try to remove the analytical part. That is one of my most finicky bitches of parts, my goodness. But to be able to remove and not overthink, which is a life goal. But it's to actually try to be authentic in that way, because that is, if you go off some script, then that's not actually you speaking from your heart. So it's taken practice to even learn how to talk to myself, plus then trusting myself to do it. It's all been a domino effect.
It's funny. I've had like kind of personal epiphanies or breakthroughs when I was having a conversation with someone and they asked me something, and just in the moment I answered it, and I looked back on it 30 seconds later and it's like, I didn't realize that was the truth. But now that I have said it and I look at it and examine it, I was like, wow, that's it. It's nail on the head. It's like, why didn't that? I don't know. It's funny how like, it's like, where did it come from? Obviously it was inside me somewhere.
That's your subconscious. That's you allowing a passage of your gut feeling, your subconscious, to actually be able to speak through, and then you trusted it. So like, say like if you did that and you look back 30 seconds later and you were just like, no, that can't be right, let me change it. Well, then you're on removing this level of trust of yourself. And the more you do that, which is something that I did my entire life, was I did not trust that gut feeling. I didn't trust that because of upbringing. And by not doing that, I feel like I didn't have a sense of myself. And that's actually like back in that manipulation concept of like, well, it's only manipulation. It's like, it's a narcissism versus like ADHD. It's at low frequency when it's used for malicious intent. It's not necessarily manipulation if you're going into it, again, like you said, yes, you're trying to reach your goal, but you're also working with that other person. If you truly were only doing and going into that interaction with, I only care about my end goal, and no matter, I don't care about other people in order to do that. Right. That's when that's like malicious. But like losing the sense of self because of being a chameleon, because of being adapted, the people pleaser, I truly did not know who the fuck I was. And that's why like I'm so pleased to be doing this podcast, because I feel like I can confidently say like I actually know who I am, and I'm learning more and more every day. And it's just beautiful. Yeah.
It's funny, like I look at it like when people start doing work on themselves, they just every day they become more who they are. And I mean, you just become more yourself all the time.
Yeah.
And I've heard people say that's why old people are such assholes. They're just becoming more themselves. they're caring less.
No more fucks to give. Yeah.
Something
that's funny as shit.
You mentioned kind of like gave me a flashback to somebody else I talked to, Peter Krask, amazing guy. I'm desperately looking for excuses to talk to him again, but he was saying that at one point he was living in a monastery and he was assigned this like monk as a mentor or a priest. And he asked him one time, why are you so sure that everybody else is right and you're wrong? Like what you believe inside, why are you so sure that's wrong and everybody else is right? And so it's like, it made me curious. Like you said that you would have a feeling and then all of a sudden your logic would kick in and you would have to like squish that. It's like, why were you so sure that you couldn't be right? You know, it's like,
Because I was questioned. I was questioned on my perspective by the closest people to me. And when your experience is not validated and your feelings aren't validated, your emotions and what you say and do, and when there's just a constant being invalidated, there was no way that would have been amazing if I could have come out of that still truly believing and understanding myself. But that was just something that past Taylor did not, you succumb into that survival mode because it's so much stronger to remember those times where, oh, I said something and then because so I'm very neurodivergent because we live in a very neurotypical geared world. I could get from point A to point B, but not necessarily at the same time as, say, my sibling and his wife could get from point A to point B in a thought process. And so because they might more were linear and I went on more of an adventure, and maybe even sometimes I got there before them, but because it wasn't in that line of thinking, I wasn't right. I was wrong. And it's just, it's called gaslighting and whatnot. I actually had this other example. This happened like this last summer or so. I was living with my family and I went to go put something in the trash can, and just like a can that was opened was sitting on top. Well, I didn't think about looking, and I go in and I cut my finger, gashed open my finger, blood, pain. And instead of being immediately somebody saying, oh my gosh, are you okay? Can I get you a Band-Aid? I got, why did you just put your hand in there? Like it was fully my fault that
Right.
I just did this thing. So like, it's kind of that, it's just, they're micro gaslight experiences, but the repetition of that just invalidated my experience. And it made me feel like my reality wasn't actually true reality.
I get it. That's interesting. Like, I just think about my kids, and we've taught them to question everything. Like even things I say, like we give them the space to do that. Here's the catch. You got to be respectful.
Yeah.
Respectful, right? You can't be, they're still dicks, but they're learning to be less, right? They're like 13 and 16. So they're still idiots, still morons, but they're getting better all the time. But like the concept, so it's so interesting to me, like to think that people like course correcting you, like, why would you, it's like, I opened my car door and an alligator jumped out and bit me. It's like, well, why would I ever expect that to happen? It's like, I never expect somebody to have...
Why did you open your car door exactly where the alligator is?
I know, right? It's like, why would you have like a sharp thing just hiding in the trash, like where nobody would ever expect, so it's like the idea that like you could be like trained like that over time. Like it's so foreign to me. Like, I don't know. I wanted my kids to, well, for also like when I was growing up, anytime my mom didn't want to answer a question, it was because I said so. And it's like, I know there is either something logical, there's a logical reason or an emotional reason why you're choosing this thing and you're just choosing not to tell me. So, and so it's like that thing never, like for me and my kids, that never existed. It's like, I will explain to you why I'm doing this. You may not like it, but you'll understand it, right? And so that always
that's
like
so validating.
That stuff drives me crazy.
Yeah, I mean, and that truly is. That's in a way like that's gaslighting. That is not being forthright with what that you're actually doing, and so all that does is leaves that big imagination up for interpretation. And so with myself, like what I experienced is because I cared so much, like I cared more what other people thought than what I thought about myself. And that was just my norm. So as soon as something like that happened, I immediately go, I did something, I said something, something's wrong. I mean, that followed me all into adulthood of like, fuck, if my director pings me randomly and is like, hey, I need to talk or something, that's the sinking feeling that I experience of
chest
like,
gets
what
tight.
did I do?
Yeah.
Yes.
You feel sick to your stomach. Oh,
yes.
Yeah.
That is
I mean, I have no idea what you're talking about. Yeah.
But it's so refreshing to hear that that's, what you're teaching your children it truly is question everyone, including your parents. especially us, like one of the things that gives me the icks is like making children hug adults even if they don't want to, or they're like hug them for like a birthday gift or something. Like, no, like all that, like that does not teach that correct kind of consent. Like just because somebody says or does something doesn't mean you owe them you at all. But that's how we were, that was kind of that raising until like central parenting came out.
Yeah. And something else we've like taught our kids is like, just because somebody is like blood related to you does not mean they're family, right? If they don't improve your life, they don't build you up, then you don't have to associate with them. You don't have to talk to them. You don't have to hang out with them. You know what I mean? It's like
easier said than done, for sure.
Well, not for us. It's easy for us. It's like now, you know, but it's, you know, family are the people you choose to let in your life, whether they share DNA with you or not. That's up to you. And life is too short. I call them
origin family. I've now switched to just calling it my origin family because, like you just said, the family you have different. You have a soul family, you have a work family. So I love that because I've just successfully, my father, I call him Tony. I was able to separate myself from that. I finally have learned how to give boundaries and reinforce them. And I mean, it's a very difficult thing. That's why I say it's not easier said than done especially when other family members just do not understand it and don't give a shit about your perspective. Like it's always make the grown adults emotions. Everyone's caring for that as opposed to, why is his daughter not talking to him or choosing to do this? No one's gone like, hey, what's the shit show you've gone through in your life to have you do this? And so, it's very interesting, but I agree. Like you choose, like you said, life is short, but in that instance, it also could be really long. Like we don't know. I always think it's so funny, like that quarter life crisis or midlife crisis, but like, how do you know when that is? Like you really could, not to throwing this out there, but you could walk out tomorrow and get hit by a bus. You just do not know. And so I've actually been saying you're guaranteed today and you can plan for tomorrow. And that is all you are guaranteed you can do. And that's how I'm trying to shift and live my life. You can plan for the future, but the amount of overthinking and the constant, like if you're thinking about the future, you're in anxiety. If you're thinking about the past, you're in a depression. So keeping that living presently, which is fucking difficult and it's boring. Living present, like to be in the present moment, boring as fuck. And that's why it's so hard. But me learning how to meditate with this fucking brain, like I have 5 streams of consciousness at any given time. Like while we're having this conversation, I'm literally having like 2 more in my head.
I'm sure far more interesting ones as well.
We're a good time. We're a good hang, I swear.
Oh man. Well, I think it was last week, like I came to kind of this epiphany. The idea of like cutting people out of your life, like that sounds so harsh. And so many people have a problem with that, especially like when it comes to your family, right? I'm doing, your origin family. I got a new phrase for it. Your origin family. When it comes to your origin family, like cutting people out is like people refuse to do it or they can't do it. And through like having this conversation with my wife, I came to this idea that like, you're not cutting them out. Like I imagine we're both on a road and we're heading to a destination. And what I do is my car's going faster and I just move ahead. When they can heal, they can get right, they can get healthy, they can fix the things in their lives they need to fix. Guess what? Their car's going to go faster. They're going to catch up with me. You know what? Hopefully that happens. If it does, it's great, man. Open my arms and I'm going to embrace them. But if it never does, that's not my fault.
Wow.
Right? Like that has nothing to do with me and everything to do with them. I'm just getting to the fireworks sooner. That's all.
Ooh,
if they get there.
I love that.
To me, that felt like so liberating because it's truly like that's really how I feel. Like if they can put in the work, like so many of us do, either therapy or, you start a podcast where you talk to people and basically make it your therapy. You start getting right, you start doing better by other people and you make amends, you fix the things, then, welcome back. Here you are. I missed you.
I love that. It's interesting that you use that metaphor. I was told from my family this last year that it felt like I was on a train and I didn't invite them. And that was very interesting to hear, because I was like, yeah, absolutely, I'm on a train, and I'm not getting. I've been trying to slow down at certain stops for them to be able to jump on, but they're not necessarily, like you said, like their train also has to be going at the same speed or faster in order to be there. And it's been a really interesting change, because when you are the peacekeeper, when you are the person that always is the one to reach out and apologize first, or ensure that communication is happening, but when that flips off, it is extremely noticeable. And that was something I learned very early in the healing process and in this journey, was people in your life will not necessarily understand, and a lot will be family. And it was for so long, it wasn't family. It definitely was a few people here and there, but I was like, wow, that's so amazing. And then that's where it started coming out, because we were families. We didn't talk about feelings. That was just not something we did. And fucking everyone talks around each other. So it's definitely the family dynamic of like, you'll talk to this person and then that person ends up like just saying it, or it's like very much talking behind your back. And I fucking feel that. I understand. And especially like language is so interesting. Like I can tell if how somebody, like say my mother is relaying a message, but the way that it's worded, I go, you've had that conversation with my aunt and my grandmother, or you've already had this conversation. And so all that makes me feel is, instead of you just talking to me, you're talking behind my back and you're making me feel like I'm doing something wrong, or that I'm just, it's like if I had something in my fucking teeth and you didn't tell me, you fucking tell me. Don't let me walk around with something in my teeth. And that's like that dynamic. That's how it feels. And it's very, it's just not my vibe anymore. And so I'm very much in the mindset of, if you have a problem with me, or if I've done or said something and you do not tell me, that is not my problem. I have to assume and keep moving along that I've done nothing wrong, because I can pick up on so many things and reach. So like that's applicable to the director reaching out. If they reach out and I have to fight myself to go, it's not, I didn't do something wrong. It's, unless somebody has told me, I have to assume that everything is fine. But this is a type of family that doesn't actually say what's wrong or on their mind. So it's just this, it's a weird dynamic, weird vibe for sure.
I don't subscribe to that.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's so many interesting things pop in my head. My brain goes on tangents. It goes on little walkabouts when you're talking about stuff. So that made me think about how, like, especially early in, well, I mean, for a really long time, like I would just talk to my wife about stuff, like whatever it was. I would kind of basically learn to process things while talking to her and getting her thoughts and opinions. And believe it or not, like having these conversations have made it so that I don't have to lean on her as much anymore. But it's funny because I've talked to people in the past and they're like, hey, this is a secret, don't tell anybody. And I'll say, okay, let's stop there, because anything you tell me, you're basically telling Christy as well, right? Like, because and somebody, I was having a recent conversation, they're like, well, that's not what my spouse and I do. Like, we only tell each other information that's pertinent. I was like, that's totally cool and everything. And it's not like I keep a daily journal of everything that happens and I need to tell her, but it's like that helps me process, because I don't always understand everything in every situation, in every moment. And like, it's so important for me to have somebody else to talk to. And like you were talking about, like, if people could just fix their shit, everything would be great. But it's like, if I could fix all my shit on my own, guess what? I wouldn't be broken. I wouldn't be so broken. It's like, so for me, like that, a lot of my growth and healing has come through my wife, like having somebody to talk to and confide in. And it sounds like you're doing a lot of that with therapy, lots of therapy, lots of reading and research.
Fuck done. And myself.
That's what people don't realize. Like, if you could fix it on your own I mean, doctors wouldn't exist because, you know what I mean? It's like, if you could just fix it, you wouldn't have to go there. You know what I
If
mean?
it was easy, anyone could do it. And again, the world
Yeah.
would look like a much different place. But that's the mission. It's figuring out how to heal your shit.
And so it's like, to me, it's like amazing that people think, oh, well, you know, I could just change, or this person could just change. Like, I'll keep giving them opportunities. And if they were going to change, they would have found help, whether it's through a book. Cause I've changed. I've learned things through books and stuff like that, or through other people. I'm sorely tempted to do therapy. I still haven't done that. And family members, you know, some of my children do, and it's been amazing for them. And kind of
Find what works.
jealous to see the progress there. But
what's holding you? What's your blocker?
Man, I don't know. I've just been really busy lately. Like, I've honestly been on
a real bad excuse. If I've heard one.
Yeah. Well, I was like traveling 2 weeks straight here recently, with like 36-hour gap in between. And then it's definitely slowing down because I am blocking out my calendar. So things are slowing down.
Yeah.
Yes. Like, I am being proactive.
But it's not like you've been busy for, right? So this is
the last several years. Yes. Yeah. I could absolutely do something.
And they do, yeah. Well, so like, and that's what it is. The question is not, can people change? It's, can people choose to change?
Yeah.
And it truly comes down to, no one can tell you to go do it. I could tout about it all day and be like, yeah, my dude, like, you would fucking feel so great. But until you decide to do, you're not gonna. It's like it's like an alcoholic. So like so my mother is 9 years sober, and but through high school she was in and out of rehab, and she gave me a call again in college, and she's like, I'm doing it, I'm gonna go again, but it's for me. And I like right then and there I was like, I in my head said, if you didn't succeed with this one, I literally I had to take a step back because of like the amount of pain that was every time that it didn't work, it didn't stick. And then it did. And truly what it is, you know, her going to AA like didn't fucking work. That was not her vibe. The rehab wasn't working. It truly was, she had to fully decide that she wanted to get better and get that house. So it's super interesting to hear that you're jealous, which jealousy is such an interesting emotion to me. And jealousy, really all that to the core of it is, yeah, you want to experience what you're seeing physically, you know, somebody else experience. But the question is, are you going to keep saying you're too busy, or are you going to take the steps in order to do so?
Yeah. Well, for me, I think it's more a theoretical like envy. I'm not super, because I am experiencing growth. I am doing it all the time, but I know therapy is like a cheat code, because I could get there way quicker. You know, if I actually went to therapy, I think it would, like I said, it'd get me to the fireworks faster if I did some of that.
I say it this way though. So like, I compare therapy like working out. I mean, you've heard, everyone hears, you get out what you put in. And so like, I've talk to people who go to therapy every week and still go, yeah, I'm in therapy every week, and still are having like super challenging issues. Well, one beckons the question is, well, are you only like waiting till therapy to do this? You do shit, like you personally, you're having these conversations, you do your own growth and shit. Therapy, it might just be, and like it could be something different. Like, I fucking love hypnotherapy because it just gave me a different perspective on how to talk to myself. So like I got to do an art therapy with my talk therapist, and that was really fucking dope. So it's just finding something and going, I'm interested enough to be vulnerable with myself in a different way. And vulnerability, I mean, that's it's a bitch. There's so many layers to vulnerability. Like I'm a completely open book to someone like having a conversation, but because of survival, like that, trying to protect myself, as soon as I start prying open and doing some shadow work and reparenting, my brain sometimes is like Netflix. It will just boom, flip to something else. And I'll realize that and I go, I am blocking myself from my own growth because of the survival mode. So there's just so many layers that you have to work through and even to get out of therapy. Like, right, like the past life things or just believing in like spirituality and whatnot. You have to believe in it and understand it and know it before it really is going to affect you. So yeah, somebody could just sign up and go to therapy, but if they're not actually willing to change and do something different, they're just doing it kind of like oh, I need to do this, then are they really going to get out everything that they need to?
I feel like I've conquered most of my big demons. You know, like
it sounds like it.
The big dragons, I've slayed most of them.
What were some of your dragons?
Oh man, like growing up, I was extremely, I don't know. I used to be a pretty like normal kid, and then I don't know, man, some switch flipped about the time, you know, ordinary. Let's say that. That's what that's what I see. Like I heard a comedian. She's amazing. What's her name? She's Canadian, but she lives over in the UK. She does a lot of stuff over there. It'll come to me in a minute. But she was saying that she was like the weirdo in high school. Like she never like finished. She like did her own stuff. She was like super kooky or whatever. And she went back home for her sister's wedding. And some of the high school girls that were total shitheads to her were there, and they were like saying blah blah blah, you know, just talking or whatever. And they sold her, Catherine Ryan, that's her name. They said, Catherine, you were never normal. And she goes, and this line has stuck with me. I mean, it seared into me. She goes, oh, honey, you guys aren't normal. You're ordinary. And I was like, oh my, because damn. I never fit in, and it's like I never wanted to, and I never really could figure out why. And it's because those people were so goddamn boring. And it's just like to me, that is like the greatest sin a human can do, is to be boring. It's like, oh my God, I can't stand it.
You know what's so interesting is that was my exact opposite experience. I was trying so hard to fit in and tried to be like everyone else that like when I started doing this, I even asked the question, am I special? Like I then started getting concerned that I was only ordinary. That thankfully only lasted a very short time because I'm fucking extraordinary. But you know, it's
extraordinary. There you go.
I'm extraordinary. Absolutely.
Yeah. I don't know, man. Like it was partially for me. I think it was that I had most of my emotions just turned off. So like the need to like obviously I still have this thing in me where I want people to not dislike me. I don't necessarily need you to like me. I just don't want you to dislike me. Like I don't know. It's sort of this, it's almost like I want people to like me, but not all the way. Like I don't want to put in that much effort. I just want you to not dislike. I don't know. It's weird. It's weird. But yeah.
No, I get that. And then I just like I had to have. I could not go without people not liking me. Like if I knew that somebody like didn't, and I could pick up on that. And it wasn't until one of the massage therapists, because like I use all therapies for like conversation. And there was this one person at work that I was just like, there's nothing I could do. There's nothing I could do that she was going to like. And my therapist goes, well, do you like everyone? And I was like, well, God, no. And she was like, so not everyone's going to like you. And I was like, oh. And so like in the business world, yeah, you're not going to like everyone, but you have to be respectful and work with that person, but they don't have to like you. And that's very difficult from a recovering people pleaser, but it's so crucial.
Absolutely. It's a hard-earned lesson. And you know what I found is like, it doesn't matter how many times somebody tells you that, you got to discover it. Just like every drug addict that I've ever heard of that recovers, right? Their family sends them to rehab over and over, and it never happens until they have some kind of rock bottom moment where they say for themselves, like, I can't do this anymore. And then, right, it has to be their decision. I think is how you said it, right? Like until they decide it's not going to change. And
honestly, like the perfect way to say that for me is like the 2 years ago, just like a little over, I experienced a domestic violence experience with my then fiance who we had bought a house together the year prior. Annie had a child. And I had a weekend to move out of this house that we had like just moved in. And when I was, sitting in my now new room that I was working, sleeping, working out in at my family's house, I had that come to understanding moment. It truly was, if I keep going at the rate that I'm going, if I keep doing the same things, same patterns, I'm truly not going to make it out alive. And I need to change it. And so right then and there, I started burning all of that shit to the ground. I burned it down, I unprogrammed, and I started reprogramming and rebuilding back up. And it's quite difficult because society as it is not set up for that kind of growth and whatnot. So it truly was, I had to make the decision to change how I actually lived life so that I didn't keep getting myself, because that 3-year of narcissism and gaslighting, that wasn't the first experience. That was just the most intense experience that I've had through life. Did you know your life is not supposed to be a soap opera? Like, I did not fucking know that. Now it's just like a badass movie, but like, I did not know. And that's really what my life was. And so when that made that decision, that is when these changes started for me, and where I've now actually like took the time for myself. But to your point, until you decide, until you hit some kind of rock bottom, and hopefully my goal is so that people don't have to hit rock bottom in order to understand how to start healing themselves. That's my passion. I also, one of my goals and missions in life is to destigmatize mental health, especially in the workplace, because we're just all suffering in silence, and we need each other now more than ever. And we need to be able to be vocal about it and destigmatize things like domestic violence and talking about anxiety and depression, talking about these things, just like how you and I are doing it. As soon as it's not conversational, as soon as you kind of hush it down, you're just adding to the fact that it is stigmatized and something it's wrong with it. So we just need to start talking about this shit like it's everyday conversation.
Yeah. And it's funny because people pretend like it doesn't affect them, or nothing is wrong with them, or they don't have any trauma or any hangups or anything. It's just, it's crazy, man. You said you hit your rock bottom. And what I'm curious is, did you have any cheerleaders beside you? People that wanted to help you, wanted to see you change? Because my experience, when you start really making changes and growth, people get uncomfortable. Right? Like at the minimum, they get uncomfortable. And at the most, they don't, I like who you used to be. I like who you were before. And it's like that before me was in pain and anguish. And it's like, that's kind of messed up. It's like, I don't ever want to be that person again. Like, I'm just curious, like,
Exactly.
did you have that support around you in any way?
Well, I'm being honest. I didn't feel that way. But I'll say it with this caveat, as, the fact that I am incredibly grateful that I did have that family support at the time, that I was able to move in with them. I was able to fully focus on myself, right? Like, all I had to do was wake up and work out. And then they had a beautiful, nice, healthy meal for dinner every night. And I truly was able to. That is a type of support. That's
Absolutely.
the type of support that we grew up with. But there is that other kind, like you were saying, there's an emotional support, it's an understanding. But here's what I'm also like dealing with right now is, these are the people who still don't understand the depth of the pain and anguish that I've been experiencing my entire life. Fuck, I didn't know that I've been in so much pain and that I've been suffering my entire life until I joined the neurodiversity community and found out that I experience ADHD and autism, BPD, and all these things. I didn't realize these things. And this masking that I was doing is that trauma masking. It's just to make sure that like I can actually function in society. But what it's so difficult is, it did feel, and it does still feel like I'm doing it on my own. And I've now just finally started to meet my soul family. I call them expanders. And so I've now been meeting my expanders that I actually trust. Like, I'm learning to trust other people. And there's now a select group of, small few individuals that I actually trust and that are supporting me. And I know that I could call them in a minute and they would do anything for them, me as, and like vice versa. So it's a good question, because like it's very difficult, because I do like, and I love my a lot of my origin family members, and I love my like best friend from 4th grade growing up, but I don't necessarily think those people always know how to best support you when they grew up in a very similar way. And that way, that's where I feel like my train has definitely, it's on a different path, and it's been quite lonely and quite difficult.
And like being a parent now, it's easier for me to look and see how, as a parent, you never want to think that your kid is hurting. Like for me, I'm trying to tiptoe around it. There's like something that I found out about one of my kids, and the idea that I left them unprotected for so long, like, oh my gosh, like just talk about feeling like there's an elephant sitting on you. Like I could feel it. I could feel the weight. I could feel it crushing me. The idea of that, right? Or to think as a parent, like with an adult child that comes to you and says, hey, I've got all this trauma. Can we, it's like, can we maybe work on this? Can we just, like I can see how a parent would want to just like just not hear any of it. You know what I mean? Like, cause it's so,
100%.
It's so hard to think that you would have imparted injury to your child. It's like, and especially if your kid is neurodivergent, and it's like you have one that's neurotypical and one that's neurodivergent, and you're like, oh, well, I treated them the same, and it's like, and I know I've always heard that you're going to screw your kids up. You're going to totally ruin them. You're just going to do it in new and interesting ways, different than your parents did. Hopefully it's new and different. Hopefully you don't repeat the same mistakes. But like I said, my kids are morons, but I love them to death.
Well, the best, so and I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, because I recall a previous conversation we've had, and I just feel like I want to say it again here, is like the fact that you even feel that way, that is not a standard, feeling. The fact that like you have such this empathy for your child, and thinking like, and I will say, right, like if treating two people, like children, fairly, one being neurodivergent, one being neurotypical, it's not actually treating them fairly. Absolutely. And that's why, like I've been saying, like now, like if you treat me equally, you're not treating me equally. And it really does, like that touched my heart, like hearing you say that, because like even that, I'm like, I'm using that language for reparenting myself, because I get to use that, and I can go back and go, that's what I would have loved. I would love a parent to do that. And so, I run into narcissism. Yeah.
It's tough because kids don't, like, I think whether you're neurotypical or neurodivergent, kids don't have the words to give to an adult to tell them how to best interact with them. You know what I mean? It's like, you don't even understand your emotions at that age. So how are you going to relay that to a parent? Which is like,
and that parent doesn't even know how to, if the parent doesn't know how to do it.
Especially that generation, bro. I mean, it's like they were so ill-equipped for anything.
And so, and like, it was, and I will say, like, my mother, we've gone through many different waves and different times, but I have been dragging her along as much as I can with this growth, because she had to get to a place to where, because I need help. At the end of the day, like I need help, and I need someone to understand me. I definitely wish, like, I hope that my family, the origin family, like gets more interested in learning about the different aspects of what makes me. But what was so interesting is, like, one, when I was first trying to learn even just how to express these things. And so, right, like I was full on focusing on myself and healing those memories. Well, a lot of times they dealt with origin family members, and it was really a weird fucking situation to like hang out with my mother and then also be like healing this fucking trauma that like, that they don't remember, and I started bringing things up, and it was very much like, unfortunately, like a gaslighting that, like, well, I didn't remember. Well, yeah, my trauma was your Tuesday. Of course, you're not going to specifically fucking remember that. But like, I finally vocalized that, like, it was healing for me to be able to say those things out loud, to be able to express to my mother when that door was locked and that I was just left in there. And of course, and I did get that, like, she didn't have those memories. And I was like, me just being able to get to, like, to say it out loud. So it's not just in here anymore. Again, it's not to make you feel bad, but in the beginning of her growth and journey, I did get the very narcissistic, like, that when somebody goes, oh, well, that means I'm a bad parent, or like, I did something wrong. Well, as soon as you do that, you're invalidating the fact that I'm expressing my feeling, and all you're doing is, well, how did you handle, or what did that make you do or look like? And so there's been a lot of relationship building in that instance of, I need you just to hear me and acknowledge these things that I'm saying. You have to understand that me saying it, again, we can't change the past, but we can change the present and the future. But the only way to do that is if we are having these conversations.
I've noticed that just saying the words out loud, even if it's not to the person, because a lot of my trauma surrounds people that aren't in my life and never will be. And they're like so far away. But it's something about, like, there's been a couple of times where I've said things out loud, and it just, like, it was powerful experience. Like, I felt
therapeutic.
So many emotions that I wasn't even anticipating. It's so strange how cathartic it is.
Out. Yeah. Super cathartic, super therapeutic. It's getting it out. It very much like so rumination. That is one of the things, battling, like, ruminating on everything, especially those, like, the negative thought spirals and whatnot. And so I did a speaking session for my company, and the question of, like, rumination came up, and somebody asked, well, like, how do you help with rumination? And one of the things that I was saying was, like, saying that shit out loud, actually saying it to, especially if you can say it to the person and in a quicker time frame. Because what I realized is, because I was having so many conversations with myself about it. So, like, say it was with a past manager, and I could have, it was so difficult. I could have 25 conversations, like, practicing or, like, saying what I would say or just repeating it. Well, by the time I actually then had a conversation with that person, it's already unfair to them, because I've already had that conversation multiple times. And I actually may be entering in at a level that's a bit more, on edge and tense, as opposed to just being able to very quickly say it. But that goes against confrontation, which goes against people pleasing and whatnot, and treating other people better than treating myself. But it's saying it out loud. And then I give myself, I try to catch myself 3 times. I give, if I notice it's one of those things that I'm thinking about, like, multiple times, I can kind of go, all right, we get one more, and then we literally have to Netflix change the channel. Like, if you're watching a horror movie and just turn it off, well, you're still going to think about the scary movie. You literally have to change it to the comedian and start really focusing and listening on that, or else that rumination could just keep going.
It's like when you get an earworm, like a song stuck in your head.
Yes.
I just have to introduce the next one.
Earworm. I have not heard it explained as an earworm. I was like, oh, that's a turn.
Oh, no. You almost got me to talk about grandmas again. We're done. We're done with that. That's fun. Well, you kind of mentioned it, and I find this really interesting, is that you have started doing a lot of, like, talks. Like, at the company that we work with, you've been doing a lot of autism awareness stuff, just like, it sounds like you're touching and pulling, like, a lot of your event planning past and a lot of kind of your technical stuff that you sort of did, just like mirroring and mashing it all together in really cool ways. And so,
oh yeah.
For one, did you ever expect yourself to be like one, like doing public speaking like this, and then two, about something so vulnerable, something so dangerous to
I'm so dangerous.
I know, dude. I'm worried.
So it actually was a dream. It's one of my dreams from college that I knew that I wanted to be a professional, like a public speaker. I just didn't necessarily know the content. And I had this idea in college. I was friends with like the president of SGA. I was the president of PRSSA. And then there was this guy friend of ours who was also just really academically, motivated. And he was the president of his fraternity, et cetera. Well, I had this idea that I wanted to go around to college campuses, and our title would have been Two Girls and a Guy, because hashtag get the kids in the door, but then have like an open, honest conversation about like what freshman year actually is like, and what things to look out for, and safety, and like have different kinds of conversations with these two people. And that went on the back burner, because then confidence and not knowing really what to talk about. And so it was so incredible. And like in college, I used to speak in front of, like I could go in and speak in front of 100 people, and I'd still get the nerves, but it enthralled me. It really, really excited me. And then we went full virtual, and it was like having to experience, I didn't realize I had, such high performance anxiety. I did sports my entire life, practices, scrimmages, tryouts, fucking excelled. Game time came. It was like I didn't know what a fucking sports ball was. It was bananas. And so the same thing was happening with giving presentations. And it might have been because that, especially with like blue jeans and whatnot, you don't get to actually see and talk to the people. But I was experiencing like the full on hands sweating, underarm, just like constricting chest, like freaking the fuck out. And I knew that this was something that I actually very much wanted to do. And I was like, I got to figure this shit out. And I had my first external paid speaking gig, it was so dope, but I had a full on like anxiety BBD attack like 30 minutes prior, because I had also like locked myself out of my house. It was a whole thing. But I literally the night before, like I literally Googled like how to gain confidence overnight. And like I listened to a Tony Robbins podcast, and then I just realized like it is practice makes progress. And the first one I did, I hosted World Mental Health Week, the panel for that. And that was last September. And that's when my life really changed, because I found out, well, it wasn't necessarily the virtual component, it was the content. When it's the content that I found that I just loved talking about, I feel like I do now. I feel so comfortable. I feel at ease. I feel excited and motivated. And it turns out I just really fucking love talking about mental health and neurodivergency and the dangerous, the being comfortable with the uncomfortable and asking the tough questions, because they're not tough for me. And I have an ability to be able to talk about these things because of those trauma traits. So full circle, I was able to change that and use it and have more of a vulnerable and open presence, because one of my passions is to ensure that whoever I'm talking to also has a level of comfort. And so when we did the autism acceptance panel, and I got to moderate this panel with these incredible autistic individuals, there's a lot more that goes into that to ensure that there is a type of comfort, because that is quite a stigmatized and understood topic. I love it. My goal is to be doing one a month. But my goal would be to be a global speaker and travel the world and talk about. I'm going to be on a TEDx at one point in my life. I'm going to do a TED Talk, and I'm going to change the fucking world.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Full circle. That's you said in the very beginning that you wanted to bring light, change the world, bring love and light, man. I can dig it.
Oh yeah.
I could definitely see it. Golly, yeah, you are an exceptional public speaker. I've noticed. So that panel, you did a tremendous job at navigating a lot of interesting personalities, right? A panel of neurodivergent people, and everybody, I mean, you never know what people are sensitive about, what they're not sensitive about, what, and words matter, words have power, and what words they want you to use and which ones you do. And I mean, it's a tightrope act with sharks underneath you and spikes above you, and you did a phenomenal job. And so, man, I like
it. It's prep session.
I was like,
it's prep sessions, and I love that you think that, because people said that for the World Mental Health Week as well. I said I was sweating bullets. Like I at that point, like I still was dealing with the sweaty hands, freaking out. You know, when you're moderating, you have to look at the Q&A, you have to engage in the conversation, you have to make sure things are moving, and that's where like the multitasking just excelled. But I was freaking out. I was so nervous. And then I was like telling people that, and I kept hearing like, oh, you would have never know. And like, you're like, no, not at all. And I was like, hashtag expert masker. That is because of masking, but it doesn't mean that it's not like literally a storm raging inside me. It's just it's getting better and better.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, it's like perception is truth. So if people believe that you are strong and confident and calm, then you absolutely are.
Yeah.
But
100%.
I remember doing like public speaking for the first time, probably like 10 years ago, like at like this kind of like, it's not a trade show, just like this Microtik user meeting thing. I would go there and I did it. I was terrible and I was terrified and it was bad. And the next year I did it again. It was bad. And it kept getting less bad and less bad. Like I don't even want to use the word better. It was just less bad and less bad. Eventually.
I mean, like less bad.
Yeah. And then, you know what I found through the repetition of that, and then doing a podcast for like 10 years and then doing panels and all that QA stuff, like, I don't know, it's like parts of that become muscle memory, and then you just start leaning into the pieces that are really interesting. And so I think the scariest part, at least it was for me, was starting. As soon as I took that first step, it was all downhill from there. I'm not saying it wasn't terrifying in between, and I have had plenty of terrifying experiences that have really educated me in one way or the other. But a lot of those terrifying experiences were also accompanied by really cool people. So, one led to the other, that led to more of the other, and then more of the other. So just back and forth, man. That's so cool. I could see you. I mean, who doesn't want to do a TED Talk? Like, I think that would be the coolest thing. Like, I would
probably a lot of people. People who probably like did not want to do public speaking or anything like that.
Oh, really? It's crazy, man. Because like when I get in front of people now, that's when I come alive. Like, I love it. Like, I absolutely thrive on that stuff.
I'm better now, like, and like what you are as well. It's like that the one-on-one conversation, I'm here for it. Like I love, just because like everyone does have a fucking story. Everyone has a different experience. They've experienced this world in a different way. Fuck, like they even talked to two twins growing up. Like you said, you could have siblings. One could be a drug addict and one could be a CEO. It doesn't, because that's just how different a personal experience could be. And I find it fascinating. I find people fascinating. And what I've used is, as opposed to just asking those like overarching questions or whatnot, or commenting and complimenting. So everybody likes to be complimented. Absolutely. But it wasn't authentic to me. So like what I have switched it to is now I only compliment someone if I truly mean it. And I ask the questions that are more meaningful to me, because interactions, they take a lot more out of me as well. Like it's, we call it spoon theory. I don't know if you've heard about that, but in the neurodivergent world, there's this great article. It's like spoon theory. You have an allotment of spoons every day, and certain tasks take certain amount of spoons. So like going and being on back-to-back calls, like that takes a lot of my communication spoons. So by the time at the end of the day, I don't even want to like look at my phone. I don't want to text somebody. I don't want to talk to somebody, because all of my communication spoons are gone. And then like you have certain task spoons and like all of these things. Oh, I just rabbited hold. I'm not sure where we were going with that one. Interpersonal communication. So thank you, Bernie. We don't always get back there, but we get there. So I prefer just getting to know people. And that's why I love moderating panels, because even though, yes, it is for, even if it's a virtual audience, I feel like I'm just having a conversation with whoever is I'm talking to. And like we did, the company, it was called like Red Hat Voices. And I got asked by someone from the diverse abilities community, and the conversation was just about how being involved in diversity, equity, inclusion, and communities have made us better individuals personally and professionally, which is just, it's so fucking true, because I have found my authentic self through all these things. And getting to talk on that, but like, here's the thing, my brain, because of like very much part of that ADHD, it's very hard to just focus on the more important thing, which in my opinion would have been the content. But instead of focusing on the content and like what I wanted to say, I worried about the housekeeping items, the slide, the flow, all of these things. And it's because it's like, it feels very much like a self-sabotage. And it feels quite like my frustration part comes out, because I just want to be able to do the thing. And then I do the conversation and I finish and I immediately go, I would have loved to say this. I don't think we spent enough time on this. And then that's where like that can really be your really toughest, like hardest critic. So I love doing these kind of speaking engagements, because it's such an opportunity to go, yes, I can prepare for certain things, but this is a time and experience to be able to just believe that my brain it has the answer. I know what I'm talking about. I know what I'm saying for the first time. I don't necessarily need to do an all-nighter and make sure that I'm saying exactly the right things, because I also realize I'll make mistakes, but I'm also able to realize I can recognize that I see a mistake as, it's not the mistake that matters. It's the actions that come from that mistake that are more important. And you only say sorry when you are ready to change that behavior. And if you've hurt someone and you can recognize that, that is when you can say, or that's a good way to say it. We rabbit hole into another thing.
No. Well, like to that end, something that's helped me a lot with that is I had a conversation with a friend of mine, Brian Brewer, and he believes in like stoicism or whatever. And one of the things he says is you really have control of almost nothing in life, right? Like you can control your thoughts, and he said you can control the intent of your actions, right? You don't actually get to choose, like what his example was, there's a starving man and you see him and you want to give him the sandwich that you're holding, but you're in a jail cell. So the intent of your action is to give it to him, but you can't, right? Because there's constraints. So I also take that to, if I say something and the intent of my actions is good, and I want to help, or I'm trying to do something positive and it's taken negatively, it's like, while I might apologize for that, I can feel okay about it because the intent of my action was good. You know what I mean? Like, and I get sometimes like, you have shown me so much grace. So it's like, I'm not even like talking about you. You're like so kind and forgiving, maybe to a fault. But some people, it's like, they don't give you that grace in that space. And it's like, man, I think that sometimes it comes down to empathy. It's like, I wouldn't try and hurt you, or I would hate to think that you believe I'm the kind of person that has malice, in mind or whatever. And so that's helped
tough, though,
me, give me a lot of space.
You're going, that the issue there, or the challenge with that is that person, yes, you may go, wow, like you should know that I'm not going to hurt you. But that person could have had a whole swarm of different traumas that actually holds no water. And so that's actually a very interesting, that's something in this DEI world that is actually a pretty hot topic, is the term used to be, or the phrase, assume positive intent. It's actually triggering for me to even just hear it. And it actually is quite negative. And we stopped using that because that's that scapegoat, right? Like it's that, right, well, I didn't mean to be racist, so I'm not racist. Well, no, you still said a fucked up thing, and you need to like understand and learn that. And so there's definitely, I'd say there's a balance with that. And it's just the hindsight and the awareness. But like, you are not included in necessarily in that group because you do have that empathetic awareness that it's not, you wouldn't necessarily go in it and like well, I'm saying this and it's my way or the highway. Like you don't have that straight, the white male fucking privilege line. Just like you definitely have more of opened up
Yeah.
space, but that is an issue.
Well, if for me, if anybody, if something is interpreted in a way that I didn't expect, I will immediately have a conversation about it. I'll say, man, that is absolutely not what I intended. I was like, what does that mean to you? Or how can I be better? If you know what I mean? It's like, to me, it's just like, I'm not just going to let this sit in the air. Let's talk about it, help me be
Prime
better.
example,
Help me to grow.
You're not in that. And that's not the norm. Like that would be wonderful if that was what occurred. Because if the more people who are just trying to go, all right, I can see how you took this, or like explain to me what this meant to you or how this made you feel. Like if we approach more conversations in that way that you're doing that is where we can, because we're trying to move away from, it's not empathy that we need to give, it's compassion. Because as soon as, like, empathy, as you are aware of, you're taking it on yourself. You're taking on that burden. But compassion, it's holding space for that person or that thing, but not fully bringing it onto yourself. And so the more that we can have these compassionate interactions, the more that somebody goes, and so, for example, it's something I do. I'm like, after an interaction, if I feel like, if my brain is kind of a record player of something that I might have said, I'll then reach out to that person and say, hey, I feel like me saying this could have come across this way, just checking in type of deal. So if we can approach these like you're doing, the more compassionate way to just try to understand how somebody else could have been affected, because you don't know what somebody else has gone through. That's the most, I don't use crazy very often. That's the most like absurd thing, is that everyone has gone through something and continue going through shit, and you have no idea. And yet we don't hold the space or the grace or the compassion for another individual. We just assume the fucking worst because we're not assuming the best of ourselves.
Well, what I was thinking about when you said that was, checking in. I use this phrase, is this blah, blah, blah. To me, that fits so perfectly with your personality, where you might go back in your head and start rethinking. I was like, I don't do that very often. So the opportunity for me to like come back and check in. It happens every now and then, every blue moon. I'll be like, I said it that way. I don't know if that was the right way of saying that.
Oh, what is that like?
But I don't. It's basically like, it's like if you could hear my thoughts, it's basically like when you put a seashell up to your ear. It's like, it's just a dull roar. There's really not a lot going on up there.
I heard recently that not everybody has constant thoughts. I go, what the fuck? Like, what? That must be so serene.
It's boring in here. It's really quiet.
It sounds lovely. But I'm grateful at the end of the day for the 7 streams of consciousness. It's the practicing, the narrowing down.
Focusing them all down. But also, to kind of close that loop, you said something I think that is like very poignant. Like the idea that if we say the wrong thing, like even if we are using empathy, it's because we haven't lived their life. We don't have those experiences, right? So like I like to think of like sometimes our decision making is like a game of Plinko, where like everything that's happened to us in the past is this little bumper that like moves the chip one direction or the other, right? To ultimately get to a decision, and if I haven't lived that same life, like my setup is completely different than yours. So, how would I expect to like feel and react the exact same way, so it's like you can't predict that stuff.
Dude, I love that game metaphor. I have a do you know the Truman? You've seen the Truman Show?
Yeah.
All right.
Gaslighting the movie. Yeah.
Here's my fucking theory. So I think every single person has their own Truman Show. There are just those that are awake and aware that it is and have more control of that, and then there are those that don't know that they're in the Truman Show. But then I imagine all of these beings just in these like, what are those big bowls that you get in and you can like roll down the hill or like run into people? Like
a giant hamster ball sort of thing?
Yeah. So like everyone is just in their own fucking hamster ball, their human ball. And we're all just like bouncing off of each other. And some people have thicker barriers and some people have like spikes and shit. And some people like just are oblivious, and we're all just like bumping into each other. And if we could just look at it like, if we could try to, if we are bumping into each other, recognize that and check in with that other person, as opposed to just being like, what the fuck, you bumped into me. Like, if we could just be more kind to each other and more compassionate, it would go a really long way.
You know, and we're going a long way, but there's a word I learned a little while back that's very akin to that. It's called sonder. You familiar with that one?
Yes. You tell me a bit more about that again.
Yeah, it's like the concept that it's the recognition that everybody's living, like, my life is a movie, right? And then I have some main characters or some main supporting actors and actresses that would be like my kids and my wife, you know, my partner. And then, you know, sometimes there's a supporting cast like you that'll come in and out every now and then. But then there's extras, right? Like people that just cross on the street. You'll see them once, you'll never see them again. And sonder is the realization that that person is living a movie that is just as rich and detailed. They have thoughts and wants and hurts just like you, right? And so it's like everybody in the world kind of is living this complex tapestry of a life, and you have no knowledge of it. You have, you know, it's like you don't see anything. So if you just have, and this is like digressing from the definition, but like if you just have like a quick interaction with somebody and it's maybe negative, you have no idea what led them to that point, right? Because everything is just so complicated and life is messy. Like, you know, there's nothing clean about it.
Messy as fuck. That's a beautiful way to say it. It's just like, also, like, all right, so you're driving and somebody is cut you off and goes really fast. And like, you have two options. You either can go, fucking ass, like, what a dick, what an asshole, blah, blah. Or you can go, you know what? Maybe that person has to poop. Like, maybe there's an emergency. And so it's deciding, are you choosing the path of anger and rage and frustration that's just going to sit, like, it only affects you, it's not going to affect that person? Or are you going to keep moving on with your day and just maybe not assume that that person was out to get you? And that's with trauma, that's where that has been my kind of the change over, is to practice that. It's come from mindfulness and meditation and just realizing, well, I can choose the path that like is natural to me. Is like, I have an intense rage. Like, you would maybe not immediately get it, but like it's intense. It holds so much anger and rage. So either fall into the what's natural, or take a moment, take a pause and go, there could be another reason for this and I just don't know. And I'm not going to let it affect my day and whatnot. And that's been a very intense lesson with that.
An employee I had one time told me, like with anger and stuff, he's like, you know, if somebody's mean to you for 10 seconds, is that going to let you ruin like all 82,000 other seconds in that day? You know what I mean? It's like,
it used to.
Yeah. It used to, it would sit on top of me for multiple days. Yeah. That stuff would, you know, and
sometimes weeks.
Learn to nip it in the bud, man. Take care of this. Well, dude, I could just keep talking and talking and talking, and I try and be very respectful of your time. You've given me way more than you had bargained for, I'm sure. So right here at the end, I just want to ask, is there, like, for people that are listening, is there any way you'd like them to interact with you on the internet?
Oh, yeah.
You know, like socials, whatever it is, like how would you have people find you?
The internet. Let's do it. So I have my brand is Thrive Not Survive 555. So that came out of after that domestic violence experience, and I was working with therapists, and I said, I'm so done with being in survival mode. I don't want to just survive. I want to thrive. And she goes, ooh, I like that. And I was like, I fucking like that too. And so that's become my motto for the last 2 years is I've been in survival mode. I figured out since I was 2. That's a really long time to be in survival mode. And so I'm done with that. And then 555 angel numbers, it's a big change. So Thrive Not Survive 555 on TikTok. I do content with mental health, neurodiversity, just general life. I've got a lot of plans on how we can actually restructure society and change this fucking world. Just on Instagram, just go Taylor Bikowski. And other than that, just hit me up. I'm always here. I'm here. Just know that you are wanted. You are not worthless. And there are there's someone out there. And if it's just me, that's all that matters, that cares about you. So just let me know if you need to talk.
That's baller, dude. I thank you so much for being open, honest, the only Taylor I've ever known from the jump. You have so much energy. I might have to take a nap after this. Like, I am just exhausted.
I'm going to go have more cake and do some fireworks myself.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Truly appreciate your time. Like, it is such an amazing gift to spend.
This is my first podcast.
Well, it's going to go live this Sunday. So you're next in the chamber.
Amazing.
Awesome.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much, Greg. I appreciate you.